Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. You are listening to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, MMA on occasion. Let's get to it.
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
The Yankees are champions of baseball.
Shaking and baking right here on the neophyte.
You guys trying to close the show. She was doing a great job of feeding. It's over.
Don't you regret not coming to the Knicks? Don't you regret not coming to the Knicks?
Game over. World Series over. Yankees win. The Yankees win.
What is happening, everybody? What is happening? Episode 720 of the podcast. Welcome to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. I'm a little tired, I'm not going to lie. My energy is all gone. I just finished watching the Yankees embarrass themselves to a mid-market bum ball club in a playoff game. I'm going to stop talking right there about the Yankees because I can tell I'm already getting frustrated talking about them. And I'm going to go on an entire fucking rant when I don't need to do that right now because this is supposed to be an episode where we talk about the Knicks, a team that I'm actually excited to watch that's coming up soon. So I can't wait until we get to that part of the month because I'm about done with. Let's talk Knicks. Let's talk Knicks. The Knicks won their first preseason opener. So that's what we're going to get into here in episode 720. Not so much the actual game itself, because the game didn't matter, right? It was a meaningless exhibition, right? Aaron Judge knows about that stuff, right? Because he only produces in those games. But, sorry, we're talking Knicks. It was a meaningless exhibition game for the Knicks. And they won 111-109 over the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, we're diving right in. It was a game where, it was. I didn't see the game live. I watched the majority of it. I can't. Fuck. I'm just thinking about this Yankees game. Sorry. I watched the majority of this game after I watched the Yankees game. I saw some of it before the game, before game one of the playoffs. No, not the playoff. When was this Knicks game? This was Sunday, so the Yankees were off. So this was yesterday. I'm recording this Monday. Monday the whatever. Monday the 7th. I'm recording this. The Knicks played on Sunday the 6th. I don't know what I was doing, but I watched some of the Knicks game. Then I was watching something else, and then I watched the tape, the encore, or whatever the fuck, a little bit after. And it's first of all, it seemed like there were a lot of Knicks fans in Charlotte, as per usual. It was MSG South. In this game, Tibbs started with the likely starting five, right, and that's the lineup with Hart over Deuce. And then he ran a 5-man second unit, which I wouldn't expect that in the regular season. But in this game, he ran a 5-man second unit with Cam, Deuce, Shamit, Precious, and Jericho. The starters played 14 minutes, give or take, each in the first half. And then there's not they didn't get a ton of second half minutes. Precious Achua played 30-something minutes in this game. I don't know why, but, Tibbs. Charlotte played LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller. So their usuals played, and they play a very high-paced brand of basketball. It's going to be a fun, young, exciting team. But for the most part, this game for the Knicks was played at a preseason pace, right? You could tell they're just out there getting their feet wet, just, not going through the motions, but just warming up, right? And just trying to gel. The spacing wasn't great at times because you could tell they're still trying to get used to playing with each other. The on-court chemistry is not there yet. But it was a good back-and-forth game. At the end, got a little sloppy. Dwayne Washington Jr. Had a chance to win it, but he missed all 3 free throws for Charlotte, and so the Knicks win by 2. But some of the stuff that caught my attention, I was paying attention to detail in this game. I have an itch on my back that I can't get to. I was paying attention to some detail, and the X's and O's stuff, trying to figure out what Tibbs was, giving a look. You saw some of the usual, right? Getting OG Anunoby off-ball looks. That was a big part of their offense last year. Early in the first quarter, this might have been the first possession. Brunson screens for OG to get him to the basket. And then throughout this game, you have Tibbs showing a lot of looks with Towns in the middle of sets. Without Isaiah Hartenstein, you're going to see Towns used as that playmaking hub on the post. And you saw Towns in multiple actions. I want to say at least 3 or 4 times yesterday, I caught the Knicks running Spain pick and roll stack, right? You had one where it was Brunson and Cat with Josh Hart as the back screener. You had a couple others, late in the first quarter, you had a Spain pick and roll. I think it was Cam, Jericho, and Deuce as the back screener. You saw a horn set with Brunson on the ball, Towns popping, and Hart as the roller, which is an interesting decision because if the big is in a drop, I don't know that I love Josh Hart as the roller because that's just a mismatch on the glass if Towns misses that shot on the pop. But I'm going to love that, and I think Knicks fans are going to love that Brunson-Towns pick-and-pop game. But yeah, you saw Towns use in a lot of those sets that iHeart was used in, right? Wheel actions. There was a set where Mikal sets a wedge screen. Towns keeps. Brunson curls off of Towns. And then Towns hits a cutting Brunson from the short corner. You saw some 5-out looks. You had a possession where Cat was up top with the ball. 4 guys spaced to prevent any gap help. Cat puts the ball on the floor and he attacks middle. And I love that. As a 7-foot big, to get him going downhill versus a small, because the defense is going to put the big on Josh Hart a lot because they want to help off him and on to Brunson. So when they do that, that's going to leave Towns with the mismatch. So to have the ability to be a 7-foot big and to be able to get downhill against a mismatch like that, and he's also a guy who doesn't need to take a ton of dribbles to get to the basket because he's got such big strides, that's going to be huge. And you saw a great example of that around the 8-minute mark in the first quarter where he attacked middle. So you're going to see, because the big is going to be on Hart a lot, you're going to see Josh Hart used as a screener lots. And he was used as a screener a lot in this game. I would expect this. Because the defense, when they throw their 5 on Josh, that's going to help Josh screen and free up space for Brunson. Because if Hart bumps the on-ball defender with his screen, now the big's on an island with Jalen Brunson with no help available because now the Knicks have shooters to pay attention to spacing out on the perimeter. So I really like the idea of just utilizing Josh Hart when he's got the big on him. Use him in short pick and roll as a playmaker with Towns as a spacer, right, as an outlet off the pick and roll. It's going to be very difficult to help on that to get the matchup you want defensively. So there's a lot of things you can do X's and O's wise. Those are just some of the things I noticed. Josh Hart's going to be playing a key part in their offense. The lineups, some interesting things. It's obviously the big topic of conversation right now is the 2 possible starting 5s, right? Are the Knicks going to go with size? Or are the Knicks going to go with spacing? Yesterday, again, I think they're going to go with that lineup. Brunson, Hart, Mikal, OG, Cat. Size. That's the size lineup. The alternative is going deuce. Going Brunson, deuce, Mikal, OG, Cat. That's the spacing lineup. But I think the positives of Hart as a starter is that, first of all, Tibbs wants to keep a rebounder in there. He just wants to have that size defensively. I think he wants to keep a guy on the floor who can boost your transition attack, can create easy looks off defensive rebounds when he pushes the pace. Right, the Knicks' first basket yesterday, LaMelo Ball misses a shot, Hart grabs the defensive rebound, and he pushes it up floor to hit Mikal Bridges cutting weak side. That's also going to help a lot with Towns and Hart playing together, as Towns is a very good deep shooter as a trailer in transition. He's got deep range, so when Hart's bringing the ball up, you got Towns behind him. So those are some reasons as to why you might see this lineup on opening night. Now, the negatives to Josh Hart as a starter, first of all, you're losing a guy to push the pace with the bench, right? The bench is losing juice. You're going to have to stagger, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think the spacing is obviously the big number one detriment putting Hart in the starting lineup. The spacing can still get tricky depending on the matchup, right? And in the last Knicks episode we talked about how putting Josh Hart around the dunker spot, we'll have a wing now stunting at Brunson drives versus a big stunting at Brunson drives. But again, yesterday we saw the defense adjust. Charlotte put Miles Bridges, who's a wing, on Towns. And Nick Richards, who's a big, was put on Josh Hart. So there was a possession where Brunson did drive, but Richards rotates off of Hart and over to the strong side to block Brunson. So that's the adjustment you're going to see if the Knicks do try to play Hart around the dunker spot to get Brunson smaller players at the rim. The defense is going to adjust and just put a big on him. But the solution to something like that is you got to try and keep Josh Hart away from Brunson actions. And I thought an example of that yesterday in the second quarter, the Knicks tried running an empty side pick and roll with Brunson and Towns, but Hart was one pass away from the action. So what Charlotte did, they sent help off of Hart onto Brunson. Hart's defender helped onto Brunson, and that kind of clogged things. So you're going to have to keep him away from Brunson actions, keep him on the weak side corner with Towns nexting Brunson. But again, when the big is on Josh Hart, it's got to be important to then bring Hart into the action as a screener. That's when you can get the big on an island. So just be aware of the matchups on the court. That's going to be something that they're going to have to really figure out and just be aware of. I think I want to see more of it with Deuce. I feel like with the Towns move, with this trade, at this point, you're at a point where it's like you may as well just go all in on spacing and go with Deuce on opening night. I feel like with Hart, it's going to have to be, again, a lot of adjusting and countering versus with Deuce McBride. I just feel like there are a lot more advantages there. It's interesting. You saw Brunson, Hart, and Towns with the bench unit in this game. You saw those three guys play with Shamet and Deuce in the second half. That lineup got some looks. It's a small lineup. It's a lineup that obviously lacks a lot of defense, but you have elite shooting and spacing in there for Brunson and Towns. And that's going to be a question mark. There's going to be a lot of staggering because the bench depth, it looked good yesterday. Maybe it's not as bad as we think, but we have to wait and see. But the bench depth going into the season is going to be a question mark at the very least. You probably need an extra wing. Maybe you use Mitchell Robinson as trade bait. Who knows, right? We'll see what happens there. You need scoring with that second unit. They haven't had that. Last year it was a low-scoring bench, especially after the trade for OG. So, when Brunson sits, the questions are going to be, who does Tibbs stagger with the bench? How many starters is he going to stagger with the bench? Is it going to be one? Is it going to be two? Right? OG Anunoby, does he play with the bench? I don't know that we see that because his game's not really creating on the ball. Right? He showed flashes of that last year, creating in the mid-range, but that's not his game. That's not his best role. I would like to see a lot of Mikal Bridges with that second unit. I think he's a shot creator, right? He's a guy who you can pair with Deuce McBride to put Deuce back into his off-wing role, which is where he's most comfortable. He's a guy who you can pair with Shamet as that knockdown shooter, right? You might see two starters, right? It might be OG Anunoby, but also with Towns. It might be Towns and Mikal Bridges, right? Towns can be used. Like, there were points last year where the Knicks ran Randall as the playmaker with the second unit. Maybe that's what Towns is going to be doing at the top of second quarters, right? As a playmaker, because he showed some promise as a big when he's on the ball. He can make quick reads from the post, right? We mentioned he hit Brunson off a curl. He also hit Anunoby off a curl in this game. He's a real good touch passer. He's got good touch as a lob passer. I like what he's able to do as a passer. He passes to spots on the floor versus just passing to a specific player. And that's, again, quick reads. That's just knowing the floor, reading the floor very well. So that's an option for sure. Precious got 5 minutes. Or I should say, Precious got minutes at the 5. We saw that in the fourth quarter with Toppin at the 4, Precious at 5. Tibbs kind of feeling that out to see how the defense looks with that lineup. I wonder if that's going to be something that's survivable. Putting OG out there with Precious. But yeah, this is just a quick little episode, not a long one. It was a preseason game. There's not a lot to take away. Deuce McBride looked very good, 22 points. He looked in midseason form. He was very aggressive with the ball. That confidence that we saw a lot last year was there. The pump fake to a sidestep 3. He was out there running multiple actions. You still want to see a little more from him as a penetrator. The defense was, of course, there with Deuce. He was picking up 94 feet. Mikal Bridges playing defense, staying attached at the hip, right? Offensively, he's cutting off the ball. He's spacing out in the corner, weak side. He's creating in the mid-range. I liked what I saw from Towns on both ends. He wasn't putting up big numbers, but he was launching threes. I love that he took the open looks. Take open looks all day. You're here to shoot. Shoot. That's how the Knick offense is going to reach its full potential, with Towns being the spacer that he was brought in to be. And he moves very well for a big, too. Really does. And I thought, I can't believe I'm saying this, I thought his defense was solid yesterday. Even as a drop big. When the Knicks had him in drop coverage, listen, the book is that his lateral quickness is not great. His recovery speed is very poor. I thought he looked good yesterday. There was a possession where he stepped up to a drive and he was still able to retreat and deflect a lob pass to Taj Gibson. Knicks get the ball and they run the break off it. So I didn't think he was bad in drop coverage at all yesterday, which is probably going to be the default coverage for him versus bringing him up to the level. So I think Tibbs, as much as we all kind of get frustrated with it, is going to run a lot of drop, even with Cat. Now, the question is, can he get him to be an effective drop coverage player? He got Precious to learn it. He got Mitch to master it. He got iHeart to be capable in it. Tibbs is the big man whisperer. If there's anybody to get Karl Anthony Towns to be in at least, semi below average drop coverage big, it's Tibbs. This kid Kolek continues to look good. Hopefully he continues to show promise, and it's him over campaign, with that second unit at some point in the season, eventually maybe. I hope so, because he looks like an NBA player. He looks like he's going to be a rotational player in this league. The Knicks fans love him. A lot of Knicks fans have been paying attention to this kid. A lot of them were really enamored with what they saw in the summer league. Yesterday, he showed some promise. He was running some two-man game with Precious in pick and roll, slip screen passing, pulling up for three when the defense went under. Quick pull-up. A very good lob passer. So he might see some time eventually in the season. It might take some time, but he might get minutes eventually. Campaign is probably going to be that guy out the gate who gets the minutes. Just because he's the veteran. He's a guy who can make basic pick and roll reads, and you saw yesterday those Campaign Deuce McBride lineups gave you a unique look, and then Shamet is going to be with that bench. I think he'll play a role. He's not Dante DiVincenzo, but he's going to be playing a similar role. The Knicks need a knockdown shooter after that trade, just off the bench, and he is I think 38% career three-point shooter. He's a guy who can come off movement, spot ups and catch and shoot, half-court shooting, transition shooting. Just the attention he draws as a spacer with shooting gravity is very important. So I think you're going to see Landry Shamet play a huge role on the bench this year. But that's it. I just wanted to run through those talking points. Quick little preseason episode, nothing long. We will head to break, get back, wrap it up with our trivia question, and that will be that. That's all we got for this episode after that. Episode 720. The Knicks win their preseason opener. We'll get to our trivia in just a sec. Stay with us. Be back in a minute.
Hey there. Thanks for listening in so far. If you enjoy this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much. You can follow us on social media as well. On Instagram, we're at BD4Pod and at Rob J. Carbone. On X, we're at BD4Pod and at RJCBD4. And on Facebook, we're BD4. If you're interested in our website, just go to www.bd4blog.com. You can subscribe to our blog on there right on the front page. Just like on the podcast, we cover Yankees, Knicks, and MMA. Also on our website are the links to the different platforms for the podcast. Thanks so much.
Studio 69 Productions is a podcast production agency created by Leo Rodriguez to allow content creators to market their podcast. It's an online platform that will market your podcast or any other project that you're working on. Get in touch with Leo Rodriguez from Studio 69 Productions. You can find Studio 69 Productions on Instagram at Studio69NJ. Studio 69 Productions, where dreams are heard and born.
Thanks for listening to BD4, where there is no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA, Yanks every series, Knicks every game, and MMA on occasion.
All right. Welcome back to the show. Let's wrap this up with our trivia question, and that will be that. right. So in this question, or in this episode, our trivia question of the day: how many 50-win regular seasons does Tom Thibodeau have under his belt? How many 50-win regular seasons does Tom Thibodeau have under his belt? I want to say I asked this before, but I hope not. All right, that's it. Nice little win for the Knicks in their preseason opener. Their next preseason game, I believe, is Wednesday, which is also when the loser Yankees will go back out there and work on their way to getting gentlemen swept. So that'll be fun. All right, folks, I appreciate it. Can't wait for the Knicks to start. I'll tell you that. All right, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it. Episode 720 is in the books. Can you tell I'm salty about the Yankees loss? Jesus. Go Knicks. This episode was brought to you by Anchor.
Hey there! If you stayed the entire way through, we thank you immensely for it. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you come back for the next episode real soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, download these episodes, and share them with your friends as well. BD4 is a 5-star podcast simply because of you, and we'd like to keep it that way. Have a wonderful day. Go Yankees, and go Knicks!